Thanks for joining us today on the Mike Lindell Show. I'm Vanessa Broussard. Mike Lindell will be joining us momentarily, along with Dr. Douglas Frank, who we have joining us today. Dr. Frank, good to see you.
Likewise, good to
Oh,
see you
it's
too,
Mike.
Vanessa. And I see Mike, he's on. That's great.
Yes, it's Mike.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Dr. Frank. I want to tell everybody before we get started with the trial, and thanks, Vanessa. I had some problems getting on here. You guys, with the trial in Colorado, where my pillow got a huge win. I don't know if you've all seen it or read about it, everybody, but we to date we're going to have Dr. Frank on, and we're going to talk about what they would let into evidence. And one of the biggest things is when Dr. Frank and I met. So we're going to go from there. Vanessa, if you have all the stuff ready as we call it out, right? You'll have everything ready?
I do. I'm going to let you two talk because I know you have a lot to talk about, and we will be on the back end making sure the viewers see everything that is being discussed today.
Okay, well, I'm going to give everybody, thanks, Vanessa. I'm going to give everybody a little backstory here about Dr. Frank and I. In the spring of 2021, everybody, or in January of 2021, I was given evidence then on January 9th by a guy that worked for the CIA on developed this thing called Hammer Scorecard. His name was Dennis Montgomery. That is his name. And the technology that he had that was developed by our government with the CIA when he worked for them, that information that he had is still to this day under seal. It's under a protective order act by the government. But one of the things that I seen, and I had experts look into it, was this was vast across all elections, across all counties, across the whole nation. And it was hard for me even to wrap my head around. And I'm going, wow, and here's the only piece that could prove computer manipulation. That's what I had in my head in January of 2021. That was until, everybody, remember, we came out with absolute proof on February 5th of 2021, which this was all about the Dennis Montgomery evidence. Most of it was people that had worked for the government, Colonel Phil Waldron, all these different people that had worked for the government, General McInerney that had validated it. But we still could not get the data out. And then we went to film another one 3, 4 weeks later called Absolute Interference. And I'm upstairs in the studio, and up comes Dr. Douglas Frank here, and he comes up, and we just started talking live on camera there, and I'm going, whoa, 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 hold the presses, everybody. We are going to make a movie called Scientific Proof. We're going to make this a 1-hour standalone because what he had discovered on that day was that this wasn't just swing states or one little county. This was across the country. And so what you did back then, doctor, to me, was you validated that there could be such a thing that tampered with all of our counties or most of them in the election and in any election. And from that point on, everybody, and we're gonna come back to that here. I'm just giving you an intro. This is what was left out of the trial I was just at, and there's a reason for that because it's like having another camera angle on a diamond heist. Okay, there is only one truth: either you have computer manipulation or you don't. Whether an election's overturned or not does not matter. If you have computer involved in that election, whether to bring down to like the skim of a casino, whether to bring down that county, this is why it goes both ways, Democrats and Republicans. And from the day we filmed Scientific Proof, it changed my life forever, and I believe it changed Dr. Frank's life forever because I spent the next year and a half flying around the country, putting on 780 hours, wearing out 4 pilots, meeting with Secretary of States, Attorney Generals, politicians. A lot of them was with Dr. Frank. I remember a big one in Missouri with about 25 politicians, including the Secretary of State and the Attorney General's office. And we were showing them on their own voter rolls, their own data. One of the things I want to know before we talk to the doctor here is this data comes from the machines. It's what their machine said happened in the election. So this isn't something made up that Dr. Frank made up or something Mike Lindell made up. This comes right from the state and it's what's reported to all of you, except for there's a difference. On these data files, you get to find out their address, who voted, where they, when they voted, how old they are, everything like that. So what I want to say there is what I did then is I spent millions of dollars. This is where I spent most of my money, everybody, flying around the country and getting voter rolls. Like in Alabama, I had to pay 40-some thousand dollars for their data files. And by getting all these, now you can go like in Alabama, where I showed the Secretary of State, you have 4,662 people that voted over the age of 110. And he looked at me and said, "Oh, we live pretty good here in Alabama." and this is what we were up against. So I'm going to bring it, Doctor. We got to go back in time here to that. I guess what I want to say, if you could give us from like when you and I met and what you had discovered, bring yourself back to that day. I think you had
Yeah.
3 or 4 states at that time. So, and by the way, everybody, in my trial in Colorado, and this is what Dr. Frankus has to put up. He's already done, I believe he told me maybe 800 and some talks across our country in
Yeah.
48 states. And the media calls him a math teacher, a high school math teacher. Well, let me tell you something. You're looking at a guy with 175 IQ. He was up for a Nobel Prize. He teaches students that have an average IQ of 145 or did. And 60 some publications, peer reviewed publications, and a specialty in molecule discovery and all this. I can't even say all. His resume is a mile long. In the trial in Colorado, the judge, Alex Halderman, their expert on machines and
Yeah.
computers, he called Dr. Frank a math teacher. He said, this high school math teacher. The judge would not let us bring in your credentials, doctor. She would not let us bring up scientific proof because they were focusing on one camera, and that was the Dennis Montgomery camera, because they know it's still under lock and key by the government. The
Mm.
government does not want you.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like UFOs. It's pretty scary. Pretty scary that to think that computers could control all of our elections. So why don't you take it away on that and tell us bring yourself back to the spring of 2021 when we met and what
Yeah.
you brought to me then, and then we'll go from there.
So, Mike, I before I met you, I watched Absolute Proof. And I was already involved in elections because the state of Pennsylvania had invited me in. And I got inside access to the voter rolls and the election in Pennsylvania. And I'd uncovered a whole bunch of fraud, and I brought it to the legislature. And I was focusing on Montgomery County. Montgomery County is where they have 500,000 voters. And so when you're working with big files like that, you don't read one at a time. You write algorithms. And so I had written a whole bunch of algorithms to allow me to analyze voter rolls and predict outcomes and everything. And so I was stunned to discover that in the state of Pennsylvania, there was all this fraud. And I mean, aren't they a majority Republican? Aren't Republicans good and Democrats bad? So as a scientist, I was just stunned to discover that. And I was scratching my head and trying to understand how could this possibly be. And then I studied Florida, and lo and behold, they had the same kind of fraud there, and North Carolina. And I started developing algorithms that would allow me to predict what was happening. And then I realized, wait a minute, how can I predict this? I shouldn't be able to predict this. This must be computer controlled. And so I'm struggling with this in my mind, and I'm trying to sort it all out. And then out came your first movie, Absolute Proof. I'm sitting there watching it. It's like the last 15 or 20 minutes of that movie, where all the paths are coming in from all the IP addresses. And I'm like, of course. That's why I can predict it, because everything is connected and everything's integrated during the election. It's being manipulated by and it's when you say machines, I think computers too, because I think of computers as machines. The whole thing's being manipulated, the whole thing. So it was so delightful when you invited me to studio, because and you did this during the movie. You kept going, oh yeah, Dr. Frank's data and my, it's like you did it.
They line up. They line up. Right up. I want to ask you something as we get deeper into this. There's a scene right there from Scientific Proof, everybody, and you're going to be able to watch that on Lindell TV. We have it up. The link will be up there. I suggest everybody in the country watch this. You need to watch Scientific Proof. There's nothing like it in the world. There's nothing. When they say Mike Lindell has no evidence, Scientific Proof has been out for over 4 years, and it's 100% proves computer manipulation. Now, I want to ask you, doctor, when you came to me, when you said you've seen fraud, to me, and I want to stop you when you said oh, Democrats bad, Republicans good, whatever. Elections affect Democrats and Republicans. Remember, everybody, the Democrats, like Amy Klobuchar in the movie Kill Chain, which they did let into the courtroom, a little piece of it in Colorado 2 weeks ago. But that's where all the Democrats said, we got to get rid of the machines. We got to get rid of the machines. When you came to me with Scientific Proof that day, when we filmed this, you said you've seen fraud in Pennsylvania. Can you describe I call it deviations. I don't, anything back then. For me, it's a deviation when somebody gets 0 votes in their own precinct. That's a deviation. What kind of fraud did you see in Pennsylvania?
So I didn't have access to the kind of data you had, that kind of evidence. I was starting from the voter rolls. And I would say, well, gee, if I analyze these voter rolls, I discover that you've got this extra little bump in turnout. What neighborhood is that in? Let's go check that out. And we would go knock on the doors and discover those people don't exist, or they moved away 10 years ago, or they're dead.
Right.
And so what was fun for me, well, I say fun because I'm a scientist and I love equations and things. What was fun for me is I got good at predicting where we would find fraud. And we could go into a neighborhood, and before I met you, we knocked on 1,600 doors and we found exactly what I expected.
Wow. Right. So you would find patterns, and what everybody I want
Yes.
everybody to just to know what this is called. What he's referring to there is called canvassing. Now in Colorado, on a parallel track, everybody in the state of Colorado, there were
Yeah.
people out there canvassing because they had seen DV. Actually, there was a lot of states, but these were two that I knew of. I had heard of Dr. Frank, and I believe you were with a gal named Kathy Barnett back then too, because she's
Yes.
seen in her election. In Kathy, I had met Kathy in December of 2020 and the Christian event we were both at, and she had told me that in her election she had won. Basically, she had won. Went to bed. We wake up and she lost, and it
Yeah.
didn't make sense. So she went out, and when you knock on doors and you have the data, I'm going to give you everybody an example of what canvassing is. One of the things we found, and I'm sure you did then. Let's say you had a household with 6 people that their data says from the machines live at this address. Now you actually go out to that address and you knock on the door and you say, "Hey, do these 6 people live here?" No, it's just me. It'd be maybe just some lady lives there, single lady or whatever it is. And then you look at the other 5 names and then you investigate them and you find out they either live in another state or they're deceased. Now,
Yeah.
and this is what canvassing was. Now, in the state of Colorado, everybody, they massively did canvassing. This was the group before the Cause of America, actually, led by Sean Smith and others, and Colonel Sean Smith.
USEIP.
And yeah, what was it called?
USEIP. USEIP.
USEIP.
Yep.
USEIP, everybody. And if you look this up, this was one of the biggest victories in the last 4 years that we could ever have. And USEIP, am I saying that right?
Yes. Yes.
USEIP, those guys, because they're canvassing, showed all this craziness in Colorado and all the fraud that they would go massively canvass and go. Not only did they get there and maybe only 1 or 2 people voted out of a 6-person household, they might have voted Republican, and the Democrat, they say they voted Democrat. There's all kinds of this stuff went on. So what did the state of Colorado do? Jenna Griswold, I believe, was behind it, the Secretary of State. They went after them in court to make canvassing illegal.
Yes.
Well, they won. I say it, USEP.
USEIP. United States Election Integrity Project. USEIP.
Right. USEIP. They won, everybody. This was a couple years ago. Had they lost, there'd be no way to ever check.
Right.
I don't
Right.
care what comes out of the machines. That's your best validation when you go right to the person's house and say,
Yep.
"Hey, did this happen here?" And it was huge victory for the country. Now this is what Dr. Frank's talking about. They were doing this in Pennsylvania with Kathy Barnett. He just told you 1,600 houses, and out of that he found so many deviations and fraud, as he's calling it, that are numbers that are impossible. This is what the machines told us, but here's what really happened because you got the facts.
Yep.
Now, and then you're going, wow. Then you check in like Florida. Like I'll give you an example, everybody. Defend Florida. Those guys did, I believe, it was like 80,000 homes. It was a crazy amount of homes that they did
Yes.
down in Florida. And
Yes.
what they found, this is the findings of a one state. What they found in Florida, there were three different camera angles. You had the Dennis Montgomery data. Now you
Yeah.
had the canvassing data from that comes right out of the data rolls. And then you had a third one we're going to talk about later in the show called the cast vote records, everybody. So you have
Yeah.
3 camera angles in the state of Florida. Well, guess what? They all came within 20,000 votes of each other. That 900 and some thousand votes were taken from Donald Trump in the 2020 election. That's just the state of Florida, everybody, which was third
Yes.
in the nation. First was California, 1.5 million. Second was Texas, 1 million. Third was 960 for Florida. Now, why would you do that in Texas and Florida? Well, in Florida, I believe they ran out of Dr. Frank, you have a good name for that. You run out of names. What do you run out of? What do you call that?
We call it a credit line. You have a
Yeah,
credit
you
line.
run out of a credit line. You run out of a credit line. Yeah, but I want you to continue to explain. So as we and I started filming scientific proof, you started telling me now that you by seeing all these different states and then these different counties, you're real fast because you're very smart. You go. This has to have a computer algorithm to it or some kind of a computer thing to it, and
Yeah.
carry it on from there. Then what did you discover? How you could? What did you discover?
So I found several anomalies, like you said. So I knew there was fraud happening. And so then the question was, well, how is it happening? And so I began experimenting and sort of reverse engineering how it was happening. And what I learned is that all I needed to do was to go into a state, say Florida, and look at one of their counties. And then I would look at the ratio by age of who voted versus who was registered. And I noticed by age that it was exactly the same in every county in the state. And that didn't make sense at all. How could you have a rural county, a metropolitan county, a urban county, a black county, green county, Chinese county. How could you have all these different demographics throughout a state? And yet, by age, every county voted exactly proportionally the same. When I say exactly, I'm talking 4 to 5 nines part per million accuracy. And that just blew me away. And so then what if you use those same ratios that work in Florida and you go to North Carolina, it doesn't work. Or Colorado, it doesn't work. But if you study one county in Colorado, you can predict all the other counties. Or you study one county in North Carolina, you can predict all the other counties. So what I was proving using mathematics is that every state was centrally controlled. Well, if every state was centrally controlled, they all had to be centrally networked. Aha, that's where you and I meet up.
That's where we meet with the computer, everybody. I'm going to explain to you, everybody, what we mean by that. You pick a county. So I'm going to pick my county in Minnesota, Carver County. Now I'm going to pick a voting age, 38 years old. If you go to every other county in Minnesota, the 2020 election, every county was the same proportion of 38-year-olds voted in every single county in Minnesota. Same proportion of 39-year-olds, 40-year-olds. And it was going, come on, that can't be. Now, what I had Dr. Frank do later on, I believe, it might have been a half a year later, I can't remember it back then, but to check out other elections going back in time. And that didn't happen, everybody. It's random. It's random. You could not, you never would have that. And there were still computers back then, but they weren't as manipulated as like they were in 2020 and beyond now, as we're seeing now. Now I want to tell you that. In other words, I think they went for the big steal in 2020, which became a blessing to us, the biggest eye opener ever. That we've got to get rid of these computers forever because they can do it anytime, anywhere, any place. They can segregate it to one state, one county, one school board election. It doesn't matter. That's what computers do. Now, what another thing. That I don't know if you ever did, but we did find out with the, which we're going to talk about a little later in the show, the Castle records, what they are and what they did. But we did find in the 2022. Well, I'm going to backtrack a little. In the 2020 election, everybody, every single county or state that Dr. Frank looked at, every one of them was computer manipulated. Is that true?
Yeah. I used to go around saying that all over the country, all over the country, I could predict every county. Then I landed in Montana one day, and they have 56 counties. And I couldn't predict 3 of the counties. And I figured something's wrong with my algorithm, something's wrong with my math because it's always worked everywhere else. So I gave my presentation to about 500 people in a fairground one day. And I said, I apologize. I don't know what's wrong with my equations. I don't know why I can't pick these 3 counties. But when I figure it out, I'll post it online on my social media so you guys can all follow me. Nope, this big cowboy walks up to the microphone and he says, nope, Dr. Frank, those 3 counties, they ain't got no internet. so there was no way for them to be connected. And isn't it fun? I can predict it if they're connected, but if they're not connected, I can't predict it.
Right. And we all know, you guys, it's the biggest lie ever told. And we're going to also have that up on Lindell TV too. They're all connected to the internet, those that have internet. Those 3 counties in Montana did not have any internet. So obviously they couldn't be computer manipulated. And what a discovery. But what happened back then, everybody, when we posted this, it didn't matter because the mainstream media, everybody was blocking us. And I believe now, looking back, what a godsend, because there was so much more to discover than there over the last 4 years, everybody. But right now, and then I'm going to go to Florida. Okay, so in the 2020 election, you have a few counties, like Dr. Frank said. There's probably some in maybe New Hampshire too. I know that, but they say they don't have machines. And what's that in Maryland, Todd? I think there's a few up there. But but anyway, all the places that we got the data that shows this algorithm, all of them, it means they were all computer manipulated of the ones we got, which was 99.9% of all the counties, probably 99%, whatever it was. Now, and then also, everybody, we got, I'm going to get ahead of us here, but we got the cast vote records also for 2020. We were ended up. I'm going to come back to that. Let's keep going with this so I don't confuse everybody, because I want to remember the Dennis Montgomery. What Dr. Frank proved was that Dennis Montgomery, it doesn't matter that there's a reason they tried to cover up Dennis Montgomery, because up until the Cyber Symposium, this came up in court too, they were all after Dennis Montgomery. But remember, everybody, up until the Cyber Symposium, I had never mentioned the name Dennis Montgomery at all to anyone. I had never mentioned Hammer Scorecard. By the way, in 2017, it was on Fox News with Sean Hannity, John Solomon, and I forget the other gal's name, but Sarah Carter. And all 3 of them they had discovered Dennis Montgomery, had vetted him. And Sean Hannity on that show said, this is the biggest discovery ever. One of the biggest ever, he said. evidence from here to the sun and back of this hammer scorecard. Now, it wasn't about the elections then, just that he existed. Now, what do you think happened then? They just squashed him, right? I mean, he don't exist. That's just a myth, a myth. Well, but now for me to have two camera angles when you came to me with scientific proof, that's why I'm going, you know what? Nobody can argue with this. If I go out to every county and every state and get their data rolls and pay millions of dollars, everybody, I spent millions and millions of dollars. Anything that stuck, I just poured my money everywhere because I wanted to save the country. And here we had something they couldn't lie about, or that the government couldn't suppress under the Protective Act like they did Montgomery. Here, we got the data. And everywhere we got the data, it was the same, everybody, computer manipulation. Now, with the, I've said a million times, the reason we would have probably never noticed these algorithms, they would never been found. A sequence of events, divine appointments had to happen. The first divine appointment, everybody, was the election itself on the morning of November 4th. One of the things, and see if I say this is right, when you skim a casino, everybody, you've got to skim everything because all the numbers are related. So if you just take money from the craps table, it's going to show up. It doesn't make sense because this is what your normal numbers are. So you're going to even have to skim the food. You got to take everything in proportion so you don't have these deviations. And on November 4th, but you also have to preset. You have to preset how much you want to skim. And if you don't skim enough, everybody, you blew it because in an election, if you don't skim enough, those swing states, you might not have enough to take them. That's what happened in the 2020 election, everybody. They set their numbers, but because the numbers were so much bigger for Donald Trump than their polls indicated, because people would not tell them they were voting for Donald Trump. They predicted about 68 million, and Donald Trump got upwards of 80 million in real numbers. Now, if they would have predicted right, you would have won all the swing states. We would all went to bed at 3 a.m. All the numbers would have been in. Everything would have been counted. Biden would have won, and the world was over. The United States was done, and forever. We were being controlled by the Uniparty, the CCP, the deep state, and the globalists. But what happened by the grace of God that night, they didn't take enough. They didn't predict enough. So he was going to win Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and he did take enough to win New Hampshire and Minnesota, but Donald Trump really won those two. But those 5 states, everybody, they had to do something. That's why they stopped everything in the middle of the night. That's the first deviation, but that's the biggest blessing in history because had that not happened, we'd all went to bed and go, well, I guess we took God out of our schools a long time ago and our nation turned its back on God and everybody likes transvestites for their kids and all this. What have we done to our country, right? And but instead, God gave us grace. He opened the doors that no man could shut, and we dug into those deviations. Those deviations were so obvious, like Michigan, 106,000 votes for Biden in the middle of the night, 3,000 for Donald Trump. What did they tell us, everybody? Those are the mail-in votes. Well, the mail-in votes in Michigan were counted on the morning of the 3rd, not in the middle of the night on the 4th. So you could go by each thing. Arizona took 2 weeks to count. Do you know, in my case in Colorado last week, they brought up the fact that Alex Halderman said, and Chris Krebs, it's the most secure election ever. The election wasn't even done being counted when they were saying those things. It's disgusting, everybody. So, but that was the first big deviation. And doctor, I might not be a huge smart guy, but I do know deviations. And I'll tell you, when things happen, you have to dig into the deviations and why they happen. And when you did that and brought me scientific proof, it actually proved not just fraud in one area. It proved Dennis Montgomery, or that there are hammer scorecard, that this device that was developed to steal elections from other countries, had been turned on the U.S. and by doing that, it's massively with the computer. It doesn't mean your data doesn't show. You'd have to go state by state and canvass, and would take years to prove the election was flipped. Correct?
Yeah, but we've been doing that ever since. And by the way,
we've been doing that ever since, right?
And by the way, I was on the phone right before this call with my team in Alabama. And guess what we're using today, Mike? We're using the data you bought 4 years ago to help do canvassing today. And so, and they wanted me to say thank you to you. So, but all that initial investment you made, we've been using for years now.
Right. Right. And those were seeds that were planted when we did the cyber symposium, which they brought up that in my court case too. They want to bury everything that it was this myth of Dennis Montgomery. That's the only data you had, Mike. And it's never been brought out that it showed the stolen election. That things shifted, everybody. Things shifted in the spring. Actually, it was February. By then, for me, actually, it was January, where this wasn't about just one election. In fact, I've said many times that I sat in Georgia when they were stealing the two senators. I prayed that they would steal both senators. And everyone says, Mike, why would you do that? Well, if I wouldn't, if they didn't steal both senators, we wouldn't be talking today, because if I was their marketer of evil, I would have said, give them back one of those senators so they shut up about the election. We're caught. We are caught. And they did everything they could to cover up. They deplatformed 1.2 million Americans on January 7th and 8th. They went after anybody with a voice. They shut them down. And if like I said, and I've said it before, if it wouldn't have been for me seeing this Dennis Montgomery, that this thing existed, and it's, were we able over months to show that it flipped the whole election? Yeah, but that part's still under protective seal. But it doesn't matter. By then it was an urgency going, wait a minute, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going, if we don't get rid of these computers, we're doomed. It's over. That was it. It's over. And when you came and validated that this was a nationwide problem and everything's on the internet, and people, it doesn't matter. I get tired of people saying Dominion this and Smartmatic this because they sued people. No, the biggest company is ES&S, and they're out of Omaha, Nebraska. They're the good old hometown boys, and they've said straight out, no voting machine is secure. Period. They're all on the internet. Think of it as your computers, everybody, and the different brands of computers. It doesn't matter if you're connected to the internet. It doesn't matter. And that's the whole thing. It's connected to the internet. Our elections are pre-designed. They're preconceived. Here's who you go to states like Utah. They don't even have a day of voting. It's just pure mail-in crime. Here's what we're going to have win here in Utah. I mean, you guys, we went to every state since then. Dr. Frank's been to 48. And what two haven't you been to?
Mississippi and Hawaii. I was invited to Hawaii, but it was the week of my son's wedding, so I couldn't make it. But all the other states,
Right on.
One of the things I'm disappointed in your case, in the sense that the case was a defamation case, and they were saying Mike Lindell was not justified in believing that the election was fraudulent and attacking Eric Coomer. But you know what? Sitting next to you in studio is a Nobel Prize nominated chemist with 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications and scientific evidence that justified your thinking. So I was disappointed that I didn't get a chance to testify for you, because, dude, I've been with you a lot, my friend. I know you believe this. I've seen, and guess what? I believe this. And not only is it belief, we have evidence. And so that justifies your comments and justifies that you're not doing defamation. You really believe this.
Well, yeah, but the judge had already said, I did get there's no malice or whatever. They ruled out all that, but the judge had already told him these are defamation statements.
Yeah,
she already told the jury that. She made a pre before they even went to trial. She already said this is defamation. Now you got to figure out, did he do it on purpose, malicious, all this stuff, which they said I did, But they did say I didn't do that, but they still put out these fines. We'll go back and appeal. But we got the biggest win was it opened the door. It's a win. It's a win. My Pillow was vindicated of all. Imagine if any advertiser that ever went out there and advertised on a program and they got sued because what the host said or what the host did. I mean, that in itself was unbelievable. But why did they attack me? They attacked me because they want me to shut up. The last thing said to that jury, Dr. Frank, was this. This is the prosecuting attorney. The prosecuting attorney, everybody, he goes, you all heard Mike Lindell's net worth was in the tens of millions, and now he's 10 million in the hole. And we're asking you, the jury, for 60 million. And if it bankrupts My Pillow and Mike Lindell, so be it. We need to send a message to the country that you cannot put out disinformation about our elections. And that's what he told the jury. I mean, it's unbelievable. But we're never going to quit here, everybody. And I will say this, Dr. Frank, when you as you went, I know after scientific proof, you and I went around the country, and I was with you at the beginning where we went. I'll never forget being in places. Were you with me in Alabama when John Merrill?
Oh yeah, John Merrill twice. Two times we went with John
twice we go. So here's a Republican Secretary of State, everybody, and you meet with them and you show him from his own voter rolls.
Yes.
This isn't for Dennis Montgomery. This was from his own voter rolls. Yes. Here, John, you have 4,662 people over the age of 110 that voted in your election. And Johnny, we live pretty good here in Alabama. You and I thought he was kidding, making a joke of it. But we thought he would at least look into it. And then Dr. Frank, everybody, showed him in Alabama where he could predict every single county in Alabama of the percentage of voters, like how many people are going to vote in that county that are 28 years old, or 20 or 30 years old or 40 years old. And he looked at you, I'll never forget it. Well, that could happen. That's what he said. Yeah, like 1 in 100 trillion infinity. Yeah, you know what? But this is what we were up against, everybody. Every single excuse known to man. And what did I call them? I called people like that blockers, traitors. I mean, I guess I didn't understand why anybody would not. He was a Republican. Why would they do like Robin Voss and Brad Rassenberger and Kim Hammers of Arkansas who block us? I think that was one of the biggest surprises to even to this
Me too.
day that
Me too.
they're either part of the Uniparty or it doesn't make sense to everybody because our teams have been blocked on every level known to man, and it's usually a Republican, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't get any resistance from the Democrats. Everywhere we go, it's the Republicans that are stopping us. And by the way,
yeah.
now that we have a top Republican in office, you notice that Kash Patel brought out 1 million phony licenses and 1 million ballots. So now there's going to be even another camera view that you've been talking about, showing
Right. No, absolutely.
guess what? There's even more
Right.
coming out.
Right. So when we circle around back to these Republicans that have been continuously blocking, and I'm going to bring that up here now too. So I'm going to bring you guys. I have brought up examples to you of what this data shows. And
Yes.
remember, when we went around the country and you show people a deviation that doesn't make sense, but yet it could be a one in a super trillion. If it's a one in a zillion, they'll go, well, it could happen. You know, it's kind of like the movie Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. I mean, it's crazy, you know, but then you get to places like I love using that. And we used it in court in Colorado with the 3 Democrats. Their name is Michelle down in there. And her and her daughter and her husband she got 0 votes in her own precinct in Georgia.
Yeah.
And now that's a pretty big deviation. And I joke, doctor, all the time and say, all Ratzenberger had to give her was 3 votes. And they would have said, I'm sorry, ma'am, nobody loves you but your family. You know,
Right.
that's what they would have said. There is no way that they would have let her look into that and dig in, but 0 is an impossibility. So they let her dig in. She went from 3rd place to 1st place. Okay. That's just one little election. And they called it computer error, or actually, you know what Alex Halderman called it, like he did Antrim County, Michigan. It was
Glitch.
no, we didn't even call it a glitch. It was human error. Human error. What? The human that typed in her thing on the computer? Give me a break, everybody. So this is what we were up against, and this is what when I was in for defamation is like calling blockers. When they served me papers on the steps of the Capitol and sued My Pillow, I got on there and called Coomer and his lawyers part of the biggest criminal crime family that ever lived, and they had committed crimes against all humanity. And what I mean by that, you're blocking, you're attacking me. There's different kinds of blockers, and you know that very well, Dr. Frank. There's the blockers you get down there, the politicians that block you at the county level, the precinct level, the state level.
Yep.
We've been all the way up in every state and all the way to the bottom, and there's those
Yes, we have.
blockers. Or you have the media. I consider them blockers. I mean, they've attacked you. They've attacked Dr. Frank. Now, let me tell you, everybody, they attacked Dr. Frank. I mean, how do they attack him? High school math teacher. Okay. You know what? I don't care. I don't care what you've ever done. The data comes right out of their machines. It's like, does it matter? I mean, you guys, this is 1 + 1 is 2. This isn't rocket science when you see the data, when someone gets 0 votes in their own precinct, or you can't explain 4,662 people that voted in Alabama over 110 years old. Now, that got brought up to Alex Halderman. By the way, if you don't know who Alex Halderman is, everybody, he's the government cyber expert that's been in all these things. And I mean, probably the worst blocker there ever was known to man. And what he said about Alabama, he said, so what? That was his thing. So what? And they asked, his lawyer said to him, well, does Alabama have voter ID? And he goes, I believe they do. Well, if they have voter ID, then 100% it was done by computer because these people did not walk in there at 120 years old and show them their ID and vote. I mean, this is like, it's so nonsensical. And then we found out during the trial that, speaking to Alex Halderman, Antrim County, Michigan was one of the first deviations that came out, everybody, in the 2020 election. And it was all over the news. You had Azov, which was out of Texas, and Russ Rams and them. They did a great investigation, a great report. And then Alex Halderman came in, and his first report called it machine error, you know, and all these things, they had machines in there. And that was in March of 2021, everybody. 3 days later, he changed his report. What happened in those 3 days? I'll tell you. He met the president of Dominion, okay? Mm-hmm. And he met the Secretary of State, or the Attorney General, Dana Nessel. I think she's the Attorney General, or she's Secretary of State of Michigan, whatever it was. And met those two. And then his report came out, and they scrubbed his report of machines. It was all human error by a clerk. So it was a lie, and more lies to cover up for these electronic voting machines. Now, and for the sake of time, I mean, what you discovered, I mean, you're a hero to this country, doctor. I mean, with the stuff you've done and
Okay.
you've never let up. And why do we not let up, everybody? Because we lose our country if we don't get rid of computers in our elections. That's the bottom line. There is no, this will all be a Band-Aid. This will all be, our great president's in there right now and the stuff getting done. It doesn't take much. You've seen what happened 4 years ago. Boom, overnight. Just, oh, you know what Biden did on his first day in office? He shut down the Alaskan pipeline or the pipeline. 50,000 people lost their jobs, 13 committed suicide, and he opened up the border, the southern border. So you did those two things. You destroy a nation with an invasion, and you destroy the economy with gas. The price of gas goes up, shipping goes up, everything. You do I mean, they could have been, if I was their marketer, but they figured they only had one shot at this. If I was their marketer, I'd have said, don't do anything stupid right now to it. So they're onto us already. Let's just act
Yeah.
like socialism is just having a cup of coffee with your neighbor, and then we'll whack them later on because we still have our machines. But they went for it, everybody, and they lost. We're onto them, and they lost. I'm going to tell one more. Maybe you can explain. I'm going to go, you guys. It was the summer of 22, June of 22. By Dr. Frank, were you up at that in Bedminster that time when we had when I did an
Yes, I was with
appreciation
you.
for
I
everybody?
was with you. Yes,
Right.
yes.
So everybody, we did. I was going
With
to
the
have a
president.
donor thing because because I was running out of money and I was going to have a donor event in Bedminster to meet the president. And this was June of 22, and I changed it. I said, you know what? I'm just going to spend every dime I have. And I said, I'm going to make it just appreciation for everybody that had taken part. So I had all the cyber guys there and the attorneys that had helped and the people on the ground, the leaders. And we had a great time. The president came in, talked for over an hour. We all
Oh,
talked and we
easy.
showed him concerns and where we were going. But one of the things that happened the next day, everybody, is, and I don't know if you were a part of that, but it was almost like an intervention against me. There were all these cyber guys, and I don't think you were there at Dr. Frank, and
Not
they
the next day.
basically cornered me. They cornered me and they said, Mike, you got to quit talking about the Dennis Montgomery evidence that this thing happened nationwide. And and I'm going, you guys, I have the data. I was talking about your data. I
Right.
said, we have data right on the machines. It happened everywhere. And then they go, well, we don't believe in the Dennis Montgomery, and we have something, and they had something different. And there's two things that happened. One is they appointed someone to go validate Dennis Montgomery, which I'm not going to say his name so he doesn't get attacked. And he did validate him, everybody. And he came back. He said, I got to tell my wife that Dennis Montgomery is just a myth and it's all going to be bogus.
Yeah.
Well, within 3 days, he got out of there and said it's all real. And he goes,
Yeah.
I've seen a unicorn, basically, is what he said. But
Yeah.
something real important came out of that little intervention. They all said, Mike, we have something. It's called the Casco records. And this will prove beyond a shadow of a doubt computer manipulation. And they explained it to me. They said, a Casco record, everybody, will show either computer manipulation or no manipulation. This is the third camera angle, everybody. What a Casco record is it shows, like if you missed a football game, the order the scores came. Let's say you'd watch the highlights all the way through the game. First quarter, 7-7. Second quarter, 14-14. Third quarter, 21-7. Numbers don't go in reverse, everybody.
Right.
It's impossible. And now, what if you found out every game you turn the channel, they were all the same score? This is what these cast vote records are showing. And I go, you got to be kidding me. And then they warned me. They said, well, Mike, there's only one bad thing. He goes, by federal law, you have to hold him 22 months. Remember, this was June of 22. So we had to get every cast vote record we could by September 3rd of 2022. So I put out a call to the nation. By then, Lindell TV was getting pretty big, everybody, and I put out a call on my show. Everybody go get the cast vote record, which you all
Yes.
can get under the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah.
So they went out and got that. Now, some states like Minnesota said, we don't know what those are, but if we ever figured out, you still can't get them. Or like
Right.
South Dakota, you can't get them. South Dakota,
Right.
you can't get them. Are you kidding me? We were blocked everywhere. Kentucky says, Mike Lindell's going to ruin the 2022 election because we're so busy getting cast vote records. Well, then you
I
had
remember that.
San Francisco Township in California put the cast vote records right up on their website and said, hey, it's for everybody to see. These are Democrats, everybody. Other people, these Republicans were trying to hide the cast vote records from it. The one thing we can get is a different camera angle. Well, we were able to get over 1,000 cast vote records from the 2022 election. Are you ready, everybody? They were all computer manipulated, every one of them.
Yep.
Now, in the 2020 election, they were all computer manipulated, of the 1,100. Now, when 2022 came around, we reached out for the cast vote records again. By this time, there was so much pushback. Like we know it's a law, but we're not going to give anybody these cast vote
Right.
records. They're onto
Right.
us. They're onto us. And we were only able to get about 540, I believe, of the 3,143 counties. But guess what, everybody? there were some counties that were not computer manipulated. So we had perfect examples
Yes.
of, and they were in Florida, by the way. They were in Florida. Miami-Dade County was one that had, that for some
Yeah.
reason, they didn't manipulate it because I don't know, DeSantis was there. If you're a real good Republican, you too can win an election. You know, you just got to be a real good Republican like DeSantis and not like Donald Trump. So they didn't do anything there. That's my theory, right? Well, anyway, we had a perfect example. My point being is, everybody, we took the cast vote records. Now think of this. You have 3 different camera angles now. And I'm not talking about one stolen election or one county
No.
board election or one election over in Georgia or one election up in Maine. I'm talking about 3 camera angles that show what? Computer manipulation across every single state in the United States of
Yes.
America.
Yes.
That's where we're at. That's why 132 countries have banned electronic voting machines. That's why we still keep fighting to this day. I'm telling you, everybody, we have to get rid of them. We have to melt them down and turn them into prison bars. This is why Dr. Frank has never went home. Do you think when people come up with the rubbish and they go, how do you like this one, Dr. Frank? Here's the new one. Well, they have paper. We have paper. It's counted on a machine, on an electronic tabulator. How about polling books, everybody? All the polling books are computerized. All the
Yes.
polling books, when you come into the office to poll, all your voter rolls on what? They're on the computers that tie into the
Yes.
election. There
There you go.
you have all these computers that are all tied
Yes.
in. They all do something.
Yes.
Anyone that says there's no computers in our town, we do paper ballots. You got a lot of that. You got them up in New Hampshire. The Dr.
Sure.
Frank just told you of counties in Montana, but these are few and far between.
Yes.
And you know, so this is why, Dr. Frank, I'm going to ask you, do you see any way out to save our country other than to get rid of these voting machines completely, computers in our elections?
I tell people you can run your election with jelly beans if you want. You can use computers if you want, but only if you have access to every single aspect of it. And so the problem with the machines is somebody else has access and they're keeping you out. You remember Clint Curtis? You featured him at
Yeah,
the moment of truth. Guess what? Clint
the
Curtis is
Democrat.
now
Yeah.
he's now the head election official in Shasta County, Northern California. That's due to
California.
our
Yeah.
work. And
Right.
California had tricky laws, so he's not going to be able to get rid of the machines, even though he'd like to. So what he's doing is he's opening everything up so that every single citizen in the city can look at any part, the whole thing. So in principle,
But
you're
those
100%
are
right.
right, right. But
In principle, we got to get rid of
those
everything.
were right. But those are in California, by the way, too. We're going to run out of time here, but I want to tell everybody
Yeah,
in Shasta County, California, they were going to get rid of their machines. And by the
yeah.
way, one of the biggest thing they use to save the machines is
Handicap.
the handicap act. And what
Yes,
happens is California had the best laws for handicap back then when they were getting rid of the machines. And what it was is you come in and you just sign a thing like a notary. This guy can see your vote no matter what handicap you had. It was very simple. Once he went into Shasta County, though, they changed the law in California. Nope. You got to use a machine for the handicap now, even though our other system was working good. So, you guys, this is what we're up against, and we're going to have Dr. Frank. We're going to have you back because what I'm going to do now over this next month or so, we're going to keep going back in time, and showing where our heads were back then and where we are now. And I'm
good.
telling you, everybody, it's hard to imagine that everything's run by these computers, but they are.
They
And
are.
but we are winning. We are winning. We have a president that wants to get rid of them. He said
Yes.
he's put out he knows we have to get to paper ballots, hand counting. Now, let's just
Yeah.
say you would have a machine like a bank that counts them. Well, then you better recount them by hand, right on the cameras. And by the way, I want to say this, everybody. We have 3 solutions that have already been tried and tested that are the best hand counting paper ballot systems in the world. We have them. Linda Rand out of Missouri, she's got the whole thing laid out. We're going to have her on this week. You guys,
Good.
this is what we're fighting for. We cannot lose the American dream. And Dr. Frank, you are a hero beyond heroes in this country. You never have stopped. And you're like me. Once you can't, if someone told you tomorrow that, hey, we're just all going to walk off the course, we know that if we just give up on this, it's over. Just because Donald Trump
Yeah.
got in, I'm attacked more now than ever because we are the biggest threat to getting rid of these electronic voting
Yeah.
machines and saving our country. And you guys out there, I want you to all, if you can help in this effort, you can go
Yes.
to check out mypillowtrial.com. Go there. I know we're taking that money now. We're going to move it forward. You have the Lindell Offense Fund, which has been used to fund around the country. By the way, Dr. Frank, where can people can support you, Dr. Frank? Because you go it all
I
yourself. It's all about helping you out with donations because you never go home. It's unreal.
I never take I don't have a formal way to give me money. When people say they want to help, I always send them to mypillow.com and I tell them to use the Dr. Frank promo code. But I've set it up so that the Lindell Offense Fund gets that. And the way I'm funded is as I travel the country, I just say, please pass the hat. And people have seen that I'm the real deal, and they just pass the hat, and that pays for my plane tickets and
Oh,
that sort
God
of thing.
bless you.
I mean, you inspired me at the beginning because you pay for everything yourself, so I can pay for everything
Yeah.
myself too. And
So
people
you
help.
guys, right? You guys go to Lindell Offense Fund if you can, then and help out
Yeah,
because that's
please do.
I don't have any money left, but that's that money 100% goes to out there to people in the country that are still moving this ball forward.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I want to thank all of you. I want to thank you for coming on, Dr. Frank. I'm going to have you on again here. I might make you a once a week guest. I mean, you are
I'd
you
be
are
delighted.
amazing, and you inspire me, and you're a hero to the country. And
You too.
I've said it before. Nowadays, you're either a hero or a traitor. There's no in between. A president said that back once in the late 1800s. He said, "You're either a patriot or a traitor. There's nothing in between." So I just made it a hero, and you are. If you look up hero, there you are.
Back at you,
So.
brother.
God bless you. Well, this is the Lindell Report. We're going to have, remember, tell all your friends about Lindell TV. This is the Mike Lindell Show, but tell everyone you can about Lindell TV. And by the way, we are publicly traded at MLMC on the over-the-counter markets. You guys check that out. But we have to expand our voice because with all the good things coming out to get to paper ballots hand counted and save our country, we need a voice, and we need to be the biggest voice here at Lindell TV. So thank you all. We'll talk to you. We'll see you all tomorrow.